Hi, I'm Jeff from New York. Please like and subscribe.
Young Billionaire, Season 2, Episode 29, Tourists in New York.
Roybin's sister is coming?
Jeff was pleasantly surprised. They all knew that Roybin had a sister who was currently in high school and that he was living frugally in university to save money for her to continue her studies. Every time he called home, he would only tell his family the good news and say not to worry about him. When his roommates heard this and saw him living on instant noodles, they were touched and sad. Roybin's sister was coming. Jeff wanted to go and support his friend so she could see how popular her brother was. He arrived at the dormitory and greeted his friends as usual. Joe, who spent a lot of time working out in the gym, teased him a little. Roybin, who didn't usually pay much attention to his appearance, had been to the barber's. He looked very handsome, wearing a white short-sleeved shirt, a pair of beige shorts and white sneakers. He looked very much smarter than usual. He also looked a little uncomfortable. John put his arm around Roybin's shoulder and said,
"Jeff, did you know this kid is hiding something from us? In the last 2 days, we've caught him buying expensive clothes and paying attention to his appearance. He also lies in bed every day playing with his cell phone. Joe and I have hardly seen him."
He continued,
"Today he got up and showered before dawn and dressed in smart clothes. Joe and I wanted to know what he was up to, so we asked him. He finally told us. He told us that his sister is coming to New York to take part in a competition, and while she's here, she's coming to visit him. We've seen his sister's picture, and she's really pretty. Apparently, he's getting himself all dressed up like a movie star just to go and meet his sister."
John slapped the back of Roybin's head.
Okay, Roybin, don't tell us, but then we won't be able to help you.
Jeff said as he sat down next to him. He tugged at his friend's clothes and said,
A Brooks Brothers shirt, Tommy Hilfiger shorts, and Puma shoes. How much did you spend on all this?
Jeff let go of his clothes, and Roybin straightened out the creases. It was the first time he had worn such expensive items, and he felt so good. He didn't want the clothes to be ruined. He looked at his friends with an embarrassed smile.
The shirt was $200, the shorts $250, and the shoes $300.
Roybin saw Jeff and John looking at him in surprise and immediately explained,
"It's not my own money. Of course I don't have that kind of money. They're all on credit."
Buddy, it seemed that you want to look good, but how are you going to pay it off? You still need money to live on, and it's not like you're going on a date. You're just meeting your little sister.
Jeff said. He thought Roybin was crazy for buying all those expensive clothes on credit.
"You guys don't understand. Do you think I want to get into debt to buy clothes? Can't you see that I had no choice?"
Roybin said awkwardly.
"I keep telling my family that I'm doing really well, that I earn more than $2,000 every month doing part-time work, and that I have plenty of money so they don't have to worry about me. Now my sister's coming, and if she sees me dressed in rags, she'll be really disappointed, and she'll go back and tell my parents. It'll kill them to hear the truth."
Roybin's friends all understood his concerns. Jeff said,
It's fine, we were just joking with you, but you'll have to keep up the pretense while she's here, if they'll think you're wealthy. If your sister finds out the truth, it'll be even worse.
"I still have a little money on me, around $350. I borrowed it from some friends. That should be enough. If it's not, I can still get a little more in my credit card."
Roybin said without any confidence. Jeff sighed inwardly, but he didn't say anything. He was sure that Roybin was making a mistake. After chatting for a while, they left to pick up his sister from the airport. While Roybin and his friend were leaving the campus, two young ladies were walking out of arrivals at JFK Airport. One of them was Roybin's younger sister Joyce. The other was her best friend, Violet Coleman.
Listen to me. Is your brother in New York really as amazing as you said he is?
Violet asked as she held Joyce's arm.
Of course. Every time he calls me, he says that he's studying hard at Peston University and he gets a scholarship every semester in his spare time. He does part-time work for only 2 to 3 hours a day and he gets paid more than $2,000 a month. And he's one of the most influential students at the university.
Joyce said proudly.
I agree that your brother sounds awesome.
Violet smiled and leaned in closer to her. She whispered,
Does he have a girlfriend yet?
She knew what Violet was thinking. She touched her friend's cheek with her finger and giggled.
You're so embarrassing. What are you thinking? Haha.
Violet's face turned as red as a tomato.
Why isn't your brother here yet?
Violet asked after waiting in front of arrivals for more than 20 minutes. She was starting to get anxious. Joyce looked at her and said,
Don't worry. My brother just sent me a WhatsApp message saying that he's rushing here right now. He'll be here any minute.
Just then, two men wearing sleeveless shirts walked over to the girls and smiled. One said to Joyce,
Hey gorgeous, are you waiting for me?
he had dyed a red hair and his friend had a dragon tattooed on his arm.
Violet, let's go.
Joyce said in a low voice before pulling away from the men. They looked very dangerous to her.
Don't go.
One of them said. The two men quickly blocked Joyce's path. They lowered their heads to look at the two girls and one said,
Is this the first time you've been to New York? Come with us, we'll show you around.
Yet a sinister glint in his eyes. As they spoke, they both reached out to grab the girl's hands.
No, what are you doing?
Joyce squealed. She and Violet were afraid. They pulled their hands away and tried to step backwards.
So, little girl, you want to have some fun?
One of the men said as he grabbed Joyce's arms and pulled her into his embrace.
Don't help.
The girl shouted in panic.
Let go. Get off us.
At that moment, Reuben, Jeff and John arrived. When they saw what was happening, they were furious. They didn't care who the two men were, but instantly rushed forward to help the girls. Jeff kicked one of them over, while John and Reuben smashed into the other man's head, knocking him to the ground. Are you okay? Reuben asked. Seeing her nod, he looked at the two men and said,
Jeff, John, come on, let's teach these guys a lesson.
The two men saw the students charging at them ferociously. They didn't know who these guys were, and they were afraid of getting beaten up again, so they ran away. Reuben walked to Joyce's side and said guiltily, I'm so sorry. Did they scare you? It's all my fault. It wouldn't have happened if we'd been on time. She took his hand and said,
Reuben, it's fine. We don't blame you at all. You were so awesome just now that you scared those men away.
Noticing that Reuben's clothes were all famous brands, Joyce's heart was filled with pride. She looked at Jeff and John and asked,
Who are your friends?
Jeff and John walked over, trying to look cool. They felt like heroes in a movie, saving the beautiful heroines. Joyce and Violet were very impressed with them. Oh, they're my roommates. This is Jeff and this is John. Reuben introduced his friends to Joyce. She smiled sweetly and said,
Jeff, John, it's good to meet you. Thank you for saving us just now. You were all so awesome.
Then she introduced Violet to Jeff and John. Violet sized Reuben up and smiled.
Reuben, Joyce has told me how well you're doing at university. Looking at the designer clothes you're wearing, I'm guessing you've also earned plenty of money. Joyce and I rarely come to New York, so you must take us everywhere while we're here.
Reuben scratched his head in embarrassment and answered, Really? Haha, well, I guess I'm doing better than most students here. He looked awkward. Jeff and John smiled secretly.
You're too modest. Where are you taking us first?
Violet asked with a smile. She was looking forward to spending time with him in New York. He was rich, so she was sure he was going to pay for everything for her. Oh, I'll take you guys to see Times Square and the Empire State Building. They're two of the things you must see in New York City, Reuben said.
Okay, bro. Let's go.
Joyce said as she took his arm and went to the roadside to call a cab. They quickly found two cabs, one for Reuben, Joyce and Violet, and another for Jeff and John.
Reuben, what kind of part-time job are you doing that you earn so much money?
Joyce asked as she looked at her brother. She felt warm and happy. Violet looked at him in anticipation. She said,
Yeah, to only work for 3 hours a day and earn $2,000 a month. That's $50 an hour. That's amazing.
Reuben looked embarrassed as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. Thinking quickly, he said, I'm a landscape architect and I teach people to paint. New York is a big city, and rich people don't care about spending money. $50 an hour isn't much to them.
So that's what you're doing. Reuben, you're amazing.
Joyce laughed. The more Violet looked at Reuben, the more she liked him and wanted to be close to him. She told him,
I also want to study landscape architecture. By the time I graduate, you'll be high up in a big company. Then you'll be able to help me with my career.
We'll talk about that when the time comes. He knew that if Joyce and Violet found out that he was lying, they would be disappointed in him. He knew that he would die of embarrassment if that happened. Reuben and his friends took Joyce and Violet to Times Square in the Empire State Building. They treated them to snacks in New York coffee shops and bought them souvenirs from the gift shops. In just a few short hours, Reuben had already spent $100. He had a little over $200 left. He wanted to treat Joyce and Violet to a nice dinner and fancy hotel room, but he had no idea how he could pay for it. Violet pursed her lips and said to him,
Let's go. We've been walking for so long. I'm hungry. Reuben, are you going to take us somewhere nice for dinner? Let's go.
Oh, Reuben wasn't sure what to do. He was thinking, we could just take them for a stroll around campus, and then for a meal at beautiful cuisine at the campus restaurant. However, when Violet asked him with such anticipation, he couldn't say anything. He felt that taking them to beautiful cuisine would seem so disrespectful.
Reuben, what's wrong? Can't you decide which restaurant to take us to tonight? It's okay. Take your time to decide on the best one. After all, you've been in New York for 2 years. You must know loads of great places,
said Violet. She continued,
Joyce and I are country bumpkins. When we get to the restaurant, we'll take photos and post them on Instagram. You mustn't laugh at us.
Don't worry, Violet. My brother won't laugh. When we get there, I'm going to take photos of all the dishes we order and of the inside of the fancy restaurant. Our friends are going to be so jealous of me having such an awesome brother.
So far, Reuben had been very generous. The girls had already spent a lot of his money since they had been in New York. Looking at their excited faces, Reuben kept smiling, but inside he was panicking. He had no idea what to do next. Then John stepped in to try to help him. He said,
Reuben wants to invite you to have a meal at the seafood bar.
The seafood bar was a small eatery near the campus, and he was very popular with the students. Although it wasn't as busy as Beautiful Cuisine or Coffee Palace, it usually had a good atmosphere. More importantly, considering the amount of money Reuben had left, it was affordable.
The seafood bar. What's that?
Violet took out her cell phone and searched for a bit. Finally, she read out,
Fresh seafood to fit everyone's budgets. From the photo of the front, it looks like a country diner, like at home. John, I know you're joking with us. Reuben wouldn't take us for a meal somewhere like that. He earns over $2,000 a month. He would never take us to eat somewhere so cheap.
Reuben's face stiffened as he felt even more awkward. Joyce noticed that something was wrong with him.
Reuben.
She whispered, wondering what was wrong. Then she said,
Actually, this seafood bar looks pretty good. We both like fish. Let's go there.
Violet wasn't convinced. She said,
Listen, Reuben doesn't need all this money, and we came all this way to New York. I think she'd let your brother treat us to a decent meal. And didn't you just say you wanted to take photos to post on Instagram? This seafood bar is just like the diners back home. Everyone would laugh at us if we posted photos of that place. We can't waste our time in New York eating somewhere like that.
Joyce replied,
Who cares what everyone thinks? Wherever Reuben takes me to eat, I'll eat.
Although she was also very puzzled and a bit disappointed. She wanted to stick up for her brother. Reuben, who was standing between the girls, was in turmoil. He wanted to stand up and shout, Stop arguing. I'll take you guys to the best restaurant in New York to eat. But he knew he couldn't pay for it. Jeff interrupted his thoughts.
Reuben, stop joking with your sister.
He looked at the girls and said,
Before we met you, Reuben had already discussed it with us, and we all decided that we're going to treat you guys to dinner at Yellow Garden tonight. What do you think? If you're not happy with that, we can go somewhere else.
Reuben and John were both shocked. Yellow Garden was a famous restaurant in New York, and it was very expensive. For 5 of them to eat there, Reuben would need at least $600. And he had a little over $200 left, and he still had to pay for a hotel room for the girls. He looked helplessly at Jeff, thinking, Jeff, you must be joking. How can I afford a dinner at Yellow Garden?